Hey guys, my guest tonight, Heather Woodward, is going to be talking about haunted Arkansas and psychic development. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the show. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Hotspots Paranormal Investigation Team, based, paranormal. Anyway, based out of Sacramento, California. It's going to be one of those days. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you think you might have a paranormal need, we can help you out. It might take us a while to get to you, but we can do that because California is this huge state. And in the case that we have to take a little extra time to get out there, we do have psychics and mediums on staff who can give you a phone call and kind of scan things and see, and see what's going on. And if there is stuff going on, they can calm it down in most cases for us. Okay, I can tell I'm a little lower today for some reason. Oh, I know, because I rose the thing in back. I was using a different backdrop earlier today because I was a guest on another show. So, I was guest hosting on Dr. Linda Selvin show. So I had a different backdrop up, so everything's kind of different back here. So now it looks like I got some chin going on here. Anyway, welcome to the show. And if you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, please feel free to follow. We're always looking for followers. And same thing with YouTube. If you're watching from YouTube, we are always looking for subscribers. If you haven't done so already, we'd appreciate it. We're just trying to build up our numbers. And for YouTube and all these social media places going across, please, if you like what you see and hear today, please feel free to hit that like button, hit the smile button, hit that happy face button, hit that heart thing that people do with their hands that I can't do, uncoordinated, and leave us a comment. I see Lynn Monet is in the chat room. Hey, Lynn, what up? And talk amongst yourselves in the chat room and ask questions, because I will be looking through the chat room today and all that good stuff. My guest tonight has been on before. She's turned into a really good friend of mine. I met her quite a while ago when I was still broadcasting over on Blog Talk Radio, and it's turned into a real nice little friendship. And I'm excited to have her on. She's been writing books about some different locations, some different states. And last time we had her on, it was for Eerie, Oklahoma. But tonight, we're going to be talking about Eerie, Arkansas. Now, I do have family in Arkansas, and I've always wanted to ask them if there was anything creepy out there. And they don't see, I just never got the nerve up to ask them. So now I could ask Heather. So I'm going to bring Heather Woodward on, and we'll get this show started, and let's rock.
Hi. How are you? It's going good.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
It's been a while. So what have you been up to?
I took a break from writing books. I wrote 2 books back to back. And then I was like, if I go see any more haunted locations, it was haunted stuff and cryptozoology and just a bunch of stuff. And I was like, okay, I need to stop the traveling for a little while. So I've been taking a little bit of a break and kind of seeing what else is out there. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes it can get really overwhelming,
Oh, yeah.
Doing it. I had to do that. I took about 6 months off for a while there because it just got to be too much.
Yeah. Need time to decompress, and I'm still working on projects, obviously, but just not writing at the time. So
Gotcha. I wanted to ask you something. I think we talked about this once before, but I'm curious because something came up on my feed about it again. The elevator game, the elevator challenge. And I know you had done this. What is the elevator challenge, and and what happened when you guys tried it?
So funny because it came up on my feed too, just recently, and
Yeah.
I started to look into it again. So that's kind of random and weird that we both are looking at the elevator game again. Um, so the elevator game, it started, I think, in Korea. I want to say Korea. I'm pretty sure. But basically, you need to be in a hotel that has 10 or more um flights, so,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever you call levels,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to go to the 10th floor. So usually 12 is like the best. But so you go in and then you do a series, you hit the buttons in a series of levels, and you have to do them in order, and then you go to the 10th floor. And you let the doors open, but you don't get out and you don't look. If somebody comes in, if a woman comes in, if you see a woman walk in, you don't look at her. You keep your eyes to the floor. You don't say anything. Then you immediately push the button to the ground floor and you walk out as soon as you can. If you open the door on the 10th floor and nothing comes, nobody or nothing comes out, you can walk out to see what happens, but you might not come back because it's an alternate world, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
But the woman, if you talk to the woman, from what I remember, she automatically takes you to that world, and you can't get back. So I know there's variations of it. That's the one I know. But if you immediately hit the ground floor and then walk out of the elevator, it doesn't matter. You're back
Mm-hmm.
in this reality and you stay in this reality.
Interesting.
We did try it. I have video of it somewhere. I put somebody. I hate elevators, so I put somebody in an elevator a couple times. A few people, actually, 2 or 3 people that are okay with elevators.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the couple of times that people did it after the first time, it was fine. But that initial first time, he told me, yeah, something ain't right. Like he said when he got to the 10th floor, he was like, I don't know about this. And then he immediately hit the first floor. So he doesn't know if he got psyched out or if it was just something really happening.
Mm-hmm.
But he said it did feel weird. Like he did feel like he transcended time or space or something. He just said it was really off just for a few minutes. So,
Interesting. Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny how these things will recirculate because it was out for a while there, and then it disappeared. And now it's starting to show up on feeds again. Where people are going out and trying this stuff.
Yeah, the other thing too is on my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
we started talking about the Lisa Lamb case again. Out
Oh,
of the
yeah.
blue, not to the last episode I did. It's not even about that. We were talking
Mm-hmm.
about uh police cover-ups and stuff like that. And I had done a
Mm-hmm.
reading on Elisa Lamb and it came up, and then we started talking about that. So it's funny that you're mentioning it because it's literally been in the forefront of my mind this week.
When we talk about now that we're led into that, see, we're going down these corkscrews now. Lisa Lamb. I mean, that's like one of the most famous cases. I mean, that hotel is
Yeah.
creepy anyway, right? Have you been
Oh
have you
yeah.
been inside that hotel?
I've not been inside. I've only been outside because when I went, they were renovating into what it
Okay.
is now.
Mm-hmm.
But we looked through the windows and we got to walk around the building, and I got to see from 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 the street. You can see the water tower, so you
Mm-hmm.
can see how far up and how hard it is to get to that water tower.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to get to that water. Let me just tell you, because we took pictures of the stairs. You can see it all from the front. So we
Mm-hmm.
took pictures of the stairs on the sides, and we took pictures of the water tower and how far up it is and how far to the back it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in order to get there, you really want to have to get there. It's not something that you can just, the way they made it seem is that you can just take the elevator straight up and go up a
Right.
couple of stairs. Yeah, but it's no, 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 no. you have to want to get there.
So you said you did a reading on her. What did you come up with? I mean, what was she going through? A manic thing, or what was
Ooh.
going on with her?
No. And then this is all allegedly, this is just my interpretation of it based
Absolutely.
on my 20 plus years of reading cards. But I got so clearly that you're never going to convince me otherwise that there was somebody there with her.
Mm-hmm.
It came up so many times. This thing of a man being there, a man taking her up there, a man helping her in um her knowing. This is what creeped me out about it. Her knowing that she was probably going to die and knowing she couldn't get out of it and being like, okay, this is it, and kind of fading away. Um, I think
Wow.
she was on some kind of medication because the way that the cards came up, it was very like she wasn't all there. It
Mm-hmm.
was like she was on either medication or she had been drugged or something because she seemed really the energy of her seemed really the only way I can describe it is blurry,
Mm-hmm.
like just kind of in and out, and her knowing that the minute that she got in the tank that she was gone. Like she had this
Wow.
realization she wasn't getting out of it. And um the other thing that I got very clearly is that the police know who did it or they think they know who did it
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, and they sort of gave up. And that was very confusing to me
Yeah.
because why do they know this person? Why do they think they know this person? Why do they have an idea of who it was? Why are
Mm-hmm.
they looking the other way? These are the questions that I asked
Right.
myself because I'm like, this is very confusing to me. And I did pull a few times
Mm-hmm.
to kind of make sure that I was getting the same information, and it kept coming up that way. And I kept asking, could it be this? Could it be that? Is it just drugs? Is it she just had a manic episode? No,
Mm-hmm.
no, it kept still telling me no. So I don't know. I've gone down the rabbit hole with that case,
Mm-hmm.
and I always come to the same conclusion, which is either the police got paid to look the other way, or
Mm-hmm.
the person that did it is connected to the police in some
Right.
way,
Right.
or it wasn't just it wasn't just one of those like open and shut cases. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why it prevails today. I was talking
Mm-hmm.
about this today on my podcast actually, which is really strange. Um, I think the reason why it's so much in our consciousness still is because we know something's wrong. We know that something's off about it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that intuitive like stomach thing where you're like, yeah, that's not right.
Right. Right. Right. I mean, like with the readings that you got, I would agree with you. It's somebody high profile. It could be somebody from some big movie star, or someone that was involved that could do a payoff like that, or again the police, or some big muckety muck with the city of LA. Who knows? But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is just my opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's somebody who used because it's in a weird, it's on Skid Row and it's not a very, in a good, very, very good area. It's somebody who knew that, used the place to do what they wanted to do, but they aren't really from there. Like they're either an official or somebody with money that goes there to do these things because
Mm-hmm.
he knows he's not going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
was my impression of it, but again, this is
Right.
all just
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting. And I loved what American Horror Story did with it. I thought it was
Yeah.
great. Oh, I loved that
Yeah.
segment. Oh my god, that was so good.
That is such a great, that's the only season I really like of American Horror Story, but yeah.
Yeah, that
And
was
the
such
first
a
one.
great season when they did that.
Yeah.
Putting in
Yeah.
Ramirez and all those people. That was really cool. And what you could think about psychics going in like that gal that was the psychic. You
Yeah.
could think that, somebody who goes in on these, and I'm not saying it's like you or anybody else, but the ghost can only take so much,
Yeah.
as far as having a psychic in their face all the time. So
Right.
I thought it was great, just the way they put it together. So, what brought you to Arkansas to write a book about Arkansas?
So I actually bought a house in Arkansas, and then I left. I rented out the house, and I'm in North Carolina right now. But
You've been
but
around Oklahoma, Arkansas, North Carolina. Yeah.
well, yeah. Well, so Oklahoma and Arkansas are really close. They're within an hour of each other. So
Mm-hmm.
I went back and forth there. But uh, I thought I was gonna stay in Arkansas. Um, I ended up meeting somebody, and we're getting married and stuff. So he lives in North Carolina with his kids, and that he didn't want to take them out of school. So I ended up coming out here and renting my place there. But um, Arkansas has such an interesting history, and it's so um, well. Where I lived was northwest Arkansas, which is a little different. It's like Eureka Springs is there, and there's a lot of crystal deposits in that area. There's Mount Ida, which is like one of the hugest crystal deposits in the whole world, is there. And the energy there is just so interesting. It's especially Eureka Springs, it's like this hotbed for transformation. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people go there just to transform and then they leave, which I suspect is what happened to me. Because I was going through a lot of growth at that time and I was trying to heal some things, and I don't know, it has that kind of energy, and so I wanted to write about it because there are so many weird things that happened there. And the book is not what I intended it to be though.
Mm-hmm.
Um Not in a bad way. Just when I started to go through some of the history, I realized how much of the disenfranchised and the enslaved were pretty much forgotten, and much of the hauntings are around these disenfranchised people. And so
Mm-hmm.
it really became a book about remembering those who had been forgotten and the stories that I learned. Um, a lot of it was about the Civil War and about there was like this whole age of enlightenment that
Mm-hmm.
happened, and people coming in for the healing waters to cure sickness and maladies, and coming in and really coming into Arkansas for a sense of new hope. And I found that to be very, I don't know, very interesting, but also very sad in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the stories, and what types of stories? I mean, like you said, were they more land-based ghosts, or are they the old homes, or where a lot of them focused?
Cemeteries. So what I found out about, and I don't really do cemeteries because I'm like, whatever. But these are like cemeteries from the Civil War. And I didn't know this, but Arkansas is where like some of the last battles of the Civil War were
Mm-hmm.
held. And so there was tons of bloodshed there. And because it's a red state and because it was primarily um what is it? So there was the Union and then there was the other ones I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know this. I wrote about it. But so we had we had the people that were about slavery, which I found out isn't really true. Um they did have slaves, but it wasn't really about slavery. It was more about land and land rights, and it was more about keeping the land, and you need the slaves to keep the land. So they didn't so much care about the slaves as much as they cared about keeping tradition and keeping the land. And that was kind
Mm-hmm.
of interesting to me too, because it was more like, if you can give us something else, we're fine with that. But
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're doing and we don't want to stop doing it because it's making us money. So
Mm-hmm.
um it was that was kind of interesting, but a lot of a lot of these cemeteries are people that were pretty much forgotten on the loser side. So what would happen is because wait, who won the union, right? I can see
Right.
the yeah, okay. So I'm sorry, I know this,
It's
but I
okay.
can't
It's okay.
remember
It's okay.
the other
It
terminology.
happens. It happens.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, but anyway, okay, so because of this, because the union won, right, and
Right.
because they they're like, okay, we're gonna take over now, which is pretty much what happened. You
Mhm.
have tons of Confederacy. Thank you. Oh my God, brain. Woo. The Confederacy soldiers got left on the side of the road, basically, or they got left in these big fields. And
Mhm.
because they didn't want to deal with the pickup, you had all these people just lost. And their
Mhm.
families going, where are the soldiers?
Mhm.
And people just missing family members. And the union was like, screw you. We're done. Like,
Right.
you can take your slavery and put it up your butt, kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And so, strangely enough, it was women from both sides who decided, you know what? You need to pick up your soldiers. You got to pick up the dead. You can't just leave them in the fields and on the sides of the roads to rot. These
Mhm.
people are still people. They still have
Mhm.
families. They still have lives. And
Mhm.
so the Daughters of the Confederacy came together and raised money through like luncheons and teas and stuff like that, and raised the money to pay people to go and pick up the the dead bodies, and then they would bring them back, um, and then try to ID as many as possible, and
Mhm.
then give them proper burials. So there are these Confederate, little teeny, off the wall Confederate um, cemeteries that are in these poor neighborhoods. They're usually in the black neighborhoods, way far off on a hill or somewhere not to be seen.
Mhm.
Um, and many of them don't have names or anything because they don't know who they are, but they wanted to put them somewhere so they weren't just dead on the side of a road. And so you go into these cemeteries and you can just feel the energy of sorrow. It's weird. Although I was there with one of my friends and we did see a Confederate soldier walk by, and
Wow.
I was like, was that like a person, or there can't be any like larpers around here. What the hell is going on? It was like midnight too.
Mhm.
And he's like, no, 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 I saw it. That was a real person. And it walked right in front of our car, like right by.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you couldn't like miss it. And in full uniform. So the other thing too is you can hear voices, people talking. We did some SD sessions. We got a lot of stuff about where am I? I want to go home.
Mhm.
Who am I? Like just soldiers being really confused about how they got there.
Mhm.
So, and then the other thing that was really interesting is the enslaved
Mhm.
didn't get markers either. They were just basically put to burial, basically.
Mhm.
So there are these uh I don't know, there's one in Fayetteville which really had me stumped because they're basically just these little plots, and they have that some of them don't even have anything on them.
Wow.
And they were just like all over, and then there were tombstones just basically thrown in a pile because they didn't know which tombstone belonged to which grave. And I'm like, what is going on here? Is this
Mhm.
real? Because it doesn't seem like a cemetery. This seems like an old plot or something. And
Mhm.
then we started to read about it. Well, I did. I started to read about it and started to like find out what was going on with it. And I guess there was a heritage foundation from the university there that
Mhm.
was literally trying to find out which tombstones went with which graves, and they basically had to dig and wipe off the plots because nobody cared for it, and as it rained and as things happened, like inches of dirt were on the actual plots, and because nobody really cared because it was the enslaved. And so just it's so weird because the Confederate cemeteries across the street from the enslaved cemetery, and they're both treated the same, like you
Wow.
don't belong here. So, but the Confederacy cemetery, they decided to give them a monument finally, and they have there's cannons.
Mhm.
Um, and that one is a little more cleaned up, but it's so interesting. That
It's
was a
sad.
really yeah, it's a really interesting cemetery too because we found all these bottles, old
Mhm.
50 from the 40s and 50s that they put moonshine in.
Mhm.
So I guess we found out from the locals that the gamblers used to go there in the
Mhm.
middle of the night and gamble in this area too because nobody nobody went there.
Makes you wonder what they heard when they got there. You know.
Well, there is a story. See, that's the thing. And this is how I ended up finding out about this whole thing about the forgotten, because there is a story about a lady. It's called the Haunted Holler. And I was looking for the holler because it doesn't really give directions as to how to get to it. And if you're from that area, you know there's hollers everywhere. So like the haunted holler doesn't really mean much to me because they're all there. They're all haunted and they're
Mhm.
all hollers. So I went looking for it because there's a story in many different variations. It's just from the telling of time and people repeating it, that there was a woman, it was actually a male and a female. It was a couple, and they got married, and then they went up to their house that they built up there in this holler, and he went to bed and she was outside because they used to cook outside. They didn't cook in the house; they cooked
Mhm.
outside, or they cooked in another room. They built these like kitchen areas. They look almost like outhouses, kind of, where they would cook. Anyway, but a lot of times they just cooked outside in the stove, like not stove, but like like it was like a mismatched kind of stove where they would put up a kind of like a thing like this, and then they would hang a pot from it, and then put the fire
Okay.
underneath.
Mhm.
So she was doing that and cooking outside, and her husband went inside to go to bed, and she was cleaning up the rest of the stuff, and she bent over and she was wearing wool skirts, and the skirt caught on fire,
Wow.
and she was screaming and ran through the holler, and she burnt to death.
Mm.
Now, there was somebody who lit on fire in that area, and they think that's where the story came from, but according to the locals, you can hear her screaming and you can see someone running through the woods.
Wow.
And so that's what I went for. I was like, okay, I want to hear the screaming person. Where is
Mhm.
this? So while I was up there with one of my friends, we found these other cemeteries, and then we're like, wait a minute, this is the story right here. And the gamblers and all the things that happened here that were
Mhm.
weird, and all these forgotten people is more interesting than the lady that ran through the woods. I never did
Mhm.
find the holler, funny enough.
Well, you know, there's so many sad stories coming out of that war. I mean, there's even the stories, of them piling up bodies in barns. And then there's still guys that are alive that are on the bottom of those piles, and they end up dying, and how
Right.
horrible it was. And then like you say, here you go through these cemeteries, and they've got these poor souls have no idea where they're at because they were just tossed aside.
Yeah, they don't
It's
know.
horrible.
They're not on their own land either.
Yeah.
They're coming from the north, and so a
Mhm.
lot of them didn't even live there. They lived in other states.
Mhm.
Missouri, a lot of them were from Missouri. A lot of them were uh where was the other state? I can't remember, but there was a few other
Mhm.
states
Right.
that they were from. But Missouri is the big one, and
Mhm.
they don't wear name tags.
Mhm.
So, it's basically identification. Do you know who this person is? They would send
Mhm.
out pictures, and hopefully someone would be like, "Yeah, that's so and so." But there's only so much you can get off of a dead picture. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
So it could be anybody at that point. Um,
It's just. I mean, like I say, it's just super sad when you think about it. Because I mean, in that war especially, cousins were fighting cousins,
yes,
brothers were fighting brothers. It just, yeah, it just breaks my heart. Breaks my heart.
yeah, and it's very interesting too because this is what I found out too. A lot of the people that said they were part of the Confederacy who had slaves were like neighbors and relatives of people in other states or even other counties that didn't have slaves, and they would talk, and they would actually be kind of on the same side, but because there was such a division, nobody said anything about it. I mean,
Mhm.
one of the slave owners that I found out that lived in Fayetteville was actually friends with George Washington. His niece married into George Washington's family,
Mhm.
but he was on the other side of the war because of where he lived and because he owned slaves,
Mhm.
even though really he didn't care about it.
Mhm.
But
Very.
because he had money and because he lived in Arkansas, it kind of, it blurs the lines a bit.
Mhm. You know what surprised me? Up here in Placerville, um, when I was doing investigations up there, how much the Civil War was in the Placerville area. Because you don't
Hmm.
think about that. When you think about it, you think about it in places like Arkansas, in places like that. But I actually investigated a bed and breakfast that she had like a berm behind her house, and when it would rain, stuff would fall out of that berm, and so she had a collection like her own little museum in the back, and it was a lot of Civil War stuff.
Oh wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I never would figure, I mean, you hear about it like at the Murphy's Hotel, right?
Yeah.
General Grant stayed there and blah blah blah. But to think that they were as far down as Placerville, and then there were encampments here and everything, it just blows you away. How far reaching that war was.
Yeah, and even in North Carolina we have battlegrounds here. They're small,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they're not as like monumental, but it was everywhere. It was like
Mhm.
it was a super divide too. I mean, the the tension is
Mhm.
kind of like how it is now between Democrats and Republicans,
Mhm.
where you're like, bro, just chill. Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be this extreme, but it's that kind of energy where, like, you know, I remember when Trump was in office, like, if you said you voted for Trump, you're going to start a war because there's
Yep.
somebody who didn't, and it's going to be a thing. And you're like,
Mhm.
whoa, okay. Like, that it's, the propaganda is kind of made to do that. Like, you're
Mhm.
fighting their fight for them. You're just pretty much, you know,
Right. Right. Right.
you're
It's
doing the
still
work
like
for
that.
them. Let's not do that.
There's a lot of division right now, boy. And
I
it's
know.
Wow, you cut it with a knife.
And that's how
Um,
that's
Go
when I
ahead.
was reading about the Civil War, that's what I felt. I was like, ooh, nothing changes. Wow.
Now let me ask you this, because you lived out here, on the
Hmm.
West Coast. The history that we get out here of the Civil War versus the history that you get in the South like that. Is there a difference
I
as far
would
as the
say,
books and stuff go?
oh, you mean the narrative?
Yeah, the narrative. Is there a difference in the narrative?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's a much more like, well, a lot of people are still mad that the Confederacy lost. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
thing. They're still a little butthurt about that, which I was like, come on, you guys, this is years ago, like lots and lots of years ago. We don't
Mm-hmm.
need to be rehashing this. But there's that general consensus of like, well, we could have won. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. Um, and then the other thing is that I think the numbers of people that died were so much greater that
Mm-hmm.
it has more of an impact in the culture of the area, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where in California and on the West Coast, it's there, but it's more
Mm-hmm.
like this thing that happened.
Yeah.
Whereas in the South, it's like a lifestyle. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this permeated the energy of the earth and it's now become part of our story. So it's a different vibe. And even when you go to these places, I went to a few battlegrounds,
Mm-hmm.
battlefields, and there were places on the battlefield where you're just like, oh my goodness, something awful happened here. Like you could just like, you just kind of stop because you're like, hmm, this is really sad. And you can't help but feel it. And it's, I don't know, it's a different experience than I've ever had with investigating
Mm-hmm.
because the sorrow and the confusion. I think that's what got me too was the confusion. Like what am I doing here? Why am I fighting this battle? I could
Mm-hmm.
die here. And like people kind of forgetting what they're there
Mm-hmm.
for in the midst of it because they realize that it's going to take their lives. So at the end of the day, they don't really even care about which side they're on.
Mm-hmm.
It's that like the mortality of it kind of hits them in that moment. And so there were lots of SD sessions and EVPs that we got of people just so confused. And so like why am I here? What am I doing here? Where's my family? That kind of thing and that
Sure.
really affected me more than I thought
Mm-hmm.
it would.
It's very sad. It's very emotional. And when you do get messages like that, and I have gotten stuff like that in the past too, it just gets you at the heart. To hear that kind of confusion from somebody.
It does because at the end of the day, all they wanted to do was be with their families.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what made me sad. Is at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day they didn't care which side they were on. They just
Mm-hmm.
cared about the important stuff, which is their families and
Mm-hmm.
those connections. And to die alone in a field is awful if you think about it. In a
Oh
place you
yeah.
don't know. Um yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how my book ended up being about that, but it did.
Well,
It
I
did.
mean that's what affected you, and it's funny as writers, even like me as a journalist, you go in and you're looking for that angle. You hate to say it, but you're looking for that particular angle, and
Yeah.
sometimes you find it in places that you least expect.
Yeah. I figured it would be an interesting place because, again, all those crystal deposits, you gotta,
Right.
I mean, the earth is crystal and then there's a water table underneath the crystals. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this place is a conduit. It's just a big beacon for
Mm-hmm.
activity. There's so many UFO sightings there because of that, like
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge everyone has seen a UFO at one time.
Mhm.
They just don't talk about it. Um, so I figured there would be some interesting stories, but I didn't realize the interesting stories were going to be actual people.
Mhm.
I thought it was
Mhm.
going to be more like, oh yeah, I saw this UFO, and or I saw this cryptid, or I saw this goblin, or whatever, because we have lots of caves and stuff too. So I figured,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
probably going to be some fairies or goblins or gnomes or something. And yeah,
Mhm.
there are those too, but it ended up mostly being about real people and about the
Mhm.
plight of the normal everyday person and the plight of the enslaved,
Mhm.
which is a huge part of Arkansas culture that everybody just sort of forgets about.
Right. Right.
You know, they shaped a lot of the recipes and the food and how things are done in the South so much.
Mhm.
So that was interesting to me too.
Mhm. It's interesting what you can come across in cemeteries. There's one out here in particular that we go to train at, and there's two. There's one particular grave of a woman, and she gets really upset when you get near her grave.
Hmm.
People can feel like arms on them, being pushing people away from it. They can hear her crying, and it's because at one point somebody had come in and knocked the grave over,
Oh.
the tombstone over. And so, some of our team members went ahead and went in and put it back up, and all this stuff. But in this one cemetery, there's so much of that. And then the Native Americans aren't allowed to be buried in the cemetery. They're buried along the perimeter.
Ooh. Wow. Okay.
And as you're sitting there doing EVP sessions and doing box sessions, you can see them watching you from the tree line.
Hmm. Wow. That's
So there's
amazing.
just so much of that instant. There's so much emotions and emotional stuff in these cemeteries. Smallpox, and
Oh
all that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I don't know if I would want to go to Arkansas like you did. I mean, it sounds really cool to hear all this stuff, but on the other hand, it's very for someone like us, it's very draining to go into places like that.
Yeah, I took a break afterwards because I was like, wow, this is not what I expected and this is not my usual kind of investigating and I don't
Mhm.
know. There's also I live 30 minutes from the Crescent Hotel. So
Mhm.
I've gone there a lot. But when you go into delve into the history of the Crescent Hotel, again, it's about people going there. It used to be a healing center, you
Mhm.
know, Dr. Well, he's not really a doctor, but Dr. Baker, going in there and creating a healing center, knowing damn well that he's not a doctor and he doesn't have any healing stuff, and then to corral people on the third floor and the second floor, third and fourth floor, I'm sorry, and then wall them up so nobody can hear their screams
Wow.
and, stuff like that. And then also having them write letters to their family members, like a certain amount of letters, so he
Mhm.
could drip feed these letters so nobody knows that they're dying, and then have them keep sending money, thinking that these people are getting healed, when in reality all they're doing is taking the local spring water with like I forget what it was. It was like spring water and something else. Like it wasn't hydrogen peroxide, but it was something like that. And
Mhm.
then he would literally take a needle and push it into their malignant tumors
Yikes.
and say, "Look, I'm healing you." And many of these people just died. And then he he actually built a mortuary in the basement
Mhm.
so they had somewhere to dump the bodies. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and you have these kinds of stories. And again, you go like I go there and it's in this beautiful place. It's on top of this hill. Um and as you go through the hallways, especially on the third and fourth floor,
Mhm.
You can hear the screams sometimes. You can feel the disease. You can
Mhm.
hear the wheels of people being gurneyed off down into the basement. I mean, the place is so active and so alive. And I used to go there just to listen to the sounds.
Mhm.
But after I went to these cemeteries, and then we went there a few more times with my friend Stephanie, who also she does the podcast with me, and we've talked about a lot of this. But we realized there's a whole other story here we're not talking about, which is
Mhm.
all of these people that just got lost here. They died here and got lost here, and they don't have any connection to their family because, according to their family, they were doing okay and they were getting better.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and they died like super peacefully. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that's an interesting one too because Baker, I don't know, there's something weird about him because they found on the property somebody was digging for renovations and they found a bunch of jars with human
Mhm.
remains in them. And they were trying to figure out what the human remains were, and they finally tested some of them and realized it was tissue. So he was taking the tumors and the weird disease parts of these people and putting them in jars and
Hmm.
burying them in the backyard. So I know, they have these, when you take the tour, you can only see them when you take the tour, but if you
Mhm.
take the tour, they have the jars sitting there and you can touch them, pick them up, look at them.
Whoa.
Yeah, they let you. Then not all of them. They don't have all of them there. The university has most of them
Yeah.
because they're looking at them, but they let them keep a few. And so, when you go on the tour, me and my mom went on the tour, and we were like, "Yeah, these are real. Okay, cool." Because the only way they let you in the basement into the mortuary is if you take the tour. Um, if
That makes
you
sense.
if you ever want to, I'm just telling anybody who's an investigator, if you ever wanted to go to the Crescent Hotel, they are paranormal positive, meaning you
Mhm.
don't have to stay there. You can literally walk through the door and tell them I'm going to investigate, and they're like, "Yeah, cool, whatever. If you need anything, let me know." Um, and
Mhm.
you can talk to any of the staff. You can, like, literally. I would be in the hallway with a. I don't know why, but every time I go, people used to come to me like, "Can I investigate with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we would have like 10 people at a time sitting in the hallway, and the staff would just walk over us and be like, "Sorry," with the room
Right.
sweepers and stuff. And they'd be
Right.
apologizing to us being in their way. And if you're really nice, they'll let you in rooms that are open, and the cleaning staff is really, really okay with investigators. So if you ask one of the cleaning staff to let you take a tour of a room while they're cleaning it, they're like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So we ended up got to see. You never get to see it. Usually they keep it
Right.
quiet, but Baker's penthouse is on the top floor, the fifth floor, which nobody knows about it, and it's the penthouse, and you have to have a special reservation to get it because it's really expensive because it's in
Right.
a tower. And we saw the cleaning lady, and she's like, "If you want to go up there, go ahead." And she let us take pictures and walk around while she
Cool.
was cleaning. But yeah, it's that kind of place. So if you're ever in Arkansas, if you're ever in Eureka Springs, go there because again, they loved. And if you, oh my gosh, there's so many times like the security guards have come up to us, they're like, "You want to hear a story?" I'm like, sure. Or they'll be like, "If you want to go on this floor at this time down into the basement and I'm here, I'll just look the other way. Hint, hint. Okay, bye."
Nice. Nice.
So, yeah, go there. Go there. It's like one of the most nicest places I've ever been. They're so nice.
Nice. Nice. Nice. Congratulations on your upcoming marriage too.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes.
Let's talk about psychic development. We got about 10 minutes left. let's talk about psychic development a little bit.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about what you see for psychic development, or what you're doing with that.
So I took a little hiatus. I used to teach classes all the time, and I used to teach mediumship, and then I just stopped doing it because it's it's really a journey of transformation for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Because but I'm getting back into it again, and I think it's just because it's needed. It's a timing thing, but I feel like the world needs more of that intuition right now. I think we need to get back to like trusting ourselves over trusting media, over trusting the powers that be. I think we need to learn how to like really navigate our own truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really believe that everybody has some sort of psychic ability. I think it's an innate kind of birthright that we have, and we
Mm-hmm.
just kind of forgot about it because part of it is religious dogma. You know, we're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to believe that we have power. We're supposed to give our power to God or to, you know, the Godhead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I truly believe that intrinsically we have the power to create our own realities. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what intuition is. Intuition is really just listening to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and listening to our inner voice and then co creating with the universe through universal consciousness or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when I teach psychic development, it's really about trust. Like 90% of the reason why people don't listen to their
Mm-hmm.
psychic inclinations is trust. They don't trust themselves.
Right.
And or they don't feel worthy of it, which I think is so strange. They're like, "Oh, little on me couldn't do that." And I'm like, "Oh my
Mm-hmm.
god." You know, some of the people that have made the biggest changes are just small people, so don't worry about it. But um I really believe that our abilities are connected to our senses.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have dominant senses, and we all learn how to navigate through those senses, but then we forget that we can use those senses to look at the future, to make decisions, to know when something is coming up, to navigate our experiences. And so I take it from a totally different way though. I am woo woo, don't get me wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also really science minded.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've taken a million courses in parapsychology and I've studied it relentlessly and obsessively.
Mm-hmm.
So I I know about the study of psi,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know it's a real thing that is you can you can create it in a laboratory. And if you can create it in a laboratory, then you can anybody can do it. It doesn't matter who it
Mm-hmm.
is. I mean, there are certain people that are more psychic than other people. I mean, some people play basketball and some people don't, you know, like some
Mm-hmm.
people are good at sports, some people aren't. So there are people that are just innately better at it, but I just feel like if you can stick somebody in a laboratory and create some kind of psi,
Mm-hmm.
then you can teach it to anybody with a little bit of like practice. So that's how I
Okay.
come at it. I don't come at it like, oh, just meditate, woo,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
doesn't do shit. Just,
Yeah.
it's more about the power of belief and the power of trust, and
Mm-hmm.
then learning to go within and listening to that inner voice and finding the answers in that way.
Okay.
So it's it's a it's a different thing. It's but when I get people in front of me and I go, look, you can do this. They're like, no, I can't. And then they see
Mm-hmm.
that they can. Possibilities. The possibilities
Absolutely.
open up because it's not just about that. Like then they're like, well, if I can do this thing, then I can maybe go and get this better job or I can get this better
Mm-hmm.
relationship. Um, I'm notorious for killing relationships though. And I always feel bad about it. But like usually people who come to me and are also struggling in their relationships and then they realize why they're struggling in the relationships
Mm-hmm.
and then they're like, well, I think I want to do something else, and I'm like, oh no, don't do that because I'm going to get blamed for it. But not again. So
Absolutely. So are you teaching again, or are you thinking about teaching again?
I'm gearing up to teach again.
Okay.
I'm getting all my stuff together and
Mhm.
putting myself out there. I
Mhm.
mean, I wrote 2 books and took a little hiatus,
Right.
and I can't do both. So everyone's like,
Mhm.
"Where did you go?" I'm like, I took down all of my websites. I got rid of my mailing list. I got rid of everything because I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it in a different way. I'm gonna do it in a way that's more um, in line with who I am now versus who I was before. Before, I think I needed to prove something, and now I'm
Mhm.
like, well, I've proven it.
Mhm.
So let's do this in a different way that's more authentic and more confident because I have the skills. I mean, I've been doing this for goodness gracious, almost 30 years now.
Mhm.
So I got the rap sheet now. It just comes from a different
Excellent.
place,
Right.
you know.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
and that being said, how can people find you?
You can go to my website, which is heatherashira.com. Ashira is my reading name, my tarot reading name. So
Mhm.
that's Heather and then ashera.com. Or you can check out my blog. I mean, my my podcast is not a blog; it's a podcast. I actually talk on it, which is nvusalien.com. So it's enviousalien.com.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm everywhere. Right now, we're talking about the best kept secret, which is
Right.
a 6-part series by Sean Stone's. No, wait. Yeah, his name is Sean Stone. It's Oliver Stone's son. He did
Oh, cool.
he did a 6-part series on the New World Order,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, let's see what this is about. So we've been talking about that, and the conversation around that has been so intense.
Mhm.
Um, we're going into like some really strange esoteric concepts and being like, okay, are we part of the experience? Are we the observers of the experience, or what? Are we creating our own egregores? Like we just go into this whole thing about
Mhm.
like how much of the experience is us and how much of it is actually it. So
Right. Right.
right,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to
yeah.
thank you for coming on. It was almost last minute in a way, but thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. So it's always fun to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's fun to talk to you too. It's like it goes by so quick.
Yeah, it does. It goes by really quick. We'll have to get you back on again at some point.
Yeah,
But
thank you so much.
you have a great rest of your week. And dang, I'm gonna have to read that. I didn't get a chance to read the book. I got it late, but I'm gonna dig into that tonight. So
All right, thank you so
off we
much.
go. All right, Heather. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
And that book is Haunted Arkansas, you guys. Haunted Arkansas. All right. Thanks. All right. Yeah, it's always fun to talk with her about stuff. Always. It's fun to pick her brain. I've known her for a long time online. Actually, you meet the best people on doing the show, and Heather's one of them, along with Lynn Monet and Maren Muter and a handful of other people that I've met over the years that I just click with and it's fun to interview them. Okay, tomorrow. Speaking of friends, Nancy Matz is going to be with us. It is Casual Friday. I might be in a Hawaiian shirt tomorrow. We'll see because it's a aloha time of year. But she's going to be talking. Her question to you is: have you ever experienced a past life intrusion? So she's going to be talking about that tomorrow. That'll be 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I feel like I'm sunk all the way down. That'll be 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you love the show, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here, and we're just trying to get the word out about our little old show. And again, if you liked what you hear and saw tonight, please be sure to hit that follow button. Be sure to subscribe if you're watching from YouTube or TikTok or Twitch or one of those one of those pages. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you're listening from the RSS feed, and a lot of you will be, thank you very much for following us, and thank you very much for downloading us and all that good stuff. I'm really excited. All right, well, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening, everyone.